So here we are. We're coming to the end of 2024, and it's been a different year for some of us. It's been a strange year. It's been a good year, a surprising year, but hey, it's also reality. Well, actually, just before we started, we were talking about contingency, and you were talking about Outlook, having to reboot or whatever your entire system. Um, they don't allow me to do that in the office because if I do, and I don't know which button to touch, and you know, I learned long ago when we used to have photocopy machines. We still do have photo, but when it used to be Xerox, this massive thing in the corner in a room all by itself, I was never allowed to go near it because I just give off this negative vibe when it comes to machines, and the machine reads it. There is a soul in the machine, and they read negativism.
Or I think it really went south when we brought in remote access to the Xerox.
Oh, oh,
So
don't.
great Christmas story. Coming up the second last day, I was in Army staff at headquarters in Ottawa. Second last day before vacation, which means something significant is about to happen because that's just how the world works, right?
Yes, always.
So we had one of those Xerox machines in its own separate room,
Right,
but it was on the LAN, the local area network. So everybody could print to it from their desk. And this
right.
was like 3:30 in the afternoon. Somebody had decided to print the entire platform of the National New Democratic Party,
No,
but had not checked the format prior to printing.
no.
So it was printing it on 4 pieces of paper per piece of paper in a
Oh,
weird organized format that was great for interactive things online, but was meant to be saved as a PDF first. Oh, this
oh,
person had gone home.
oh.
So I was not in a position to be able to log in to the device to cancel their print job because their 300-page national platform of the NDP turned out to be he wanted to print 1,200 pages. And of course, it jammed at one point or another, as they always do. And when you
Yes.
clear the jam, it records the job and it pops up on the little keypad to tell you 122 completed of 1,340.
Oh,
And I'm standing there simply wanting to print something basic that my
mhm.
boss wants in paper
Yeah,
to take home with him on holidays, to ponder and pontificate.
right.
And I'm staring at this problem. And so you're right. There are human beings who should not be given access to technology.
Right.
And there was an old
I'm one of them.
there was an old saying once that how will you know the really important people of the future? They're the people who don't have a smartphone. They're surrounded by people with smartphones.
Ah, yes, yes. I remember being in the States. I think I was in somewhere in Washington, and it was probably at the Reagan International Airport. And there was an older gentleman there with his EA, executive assistant. And somewhere along the line, we had been introduced to each other, this group, this man, this da, 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 da. And this goes back quite a number of decades. And I think I was carrying a cell phone, so it would have been my Ericsson. Really, this was the one that you could drop onto an aircraft carrier and watch the aircraft carrier, sink.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. Yeah.
one of those really solid things.
It was a doorstop.
Yes, oh, totally. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And this man said, "Oh, you have a cell phone. I don't have one of those." And I thought, this is the CEO of a fairly significant, not small organization. I said, "Well, how do you get by?" He said, "I don't even know how to use one." I went, here I am, the dough
Yep.
head going, with the dough eyes that go with the dough head, going, whoa. Said, I have people who do that.
Exactly.
And I thought, lesson learned, lesson
Yep.
learned,
Yep.
true leadership is actually, or yes, let's say true leadership is really surrounding yourself by people who know a whole lot better.
Oh, if
Definitely.
you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, even
No,
when
that's
you're
right.
the leader of the organization. If
Oh,
you're the leader of the organization and you're the smartest one in the room,
yeah,
you've done a bad job at HR.
that's right. You've got big problems
Oh,
because now
huge.
everything revolves around you.
Yeah, well, yeah. And if you're the centerpiece of the organization, then you have a hobby, not a business, because
Oh, yeah.
now you may be making a lot of money and employing people, but it is so difficult. I love the idea that I know people who are far more intelligent and knowledgeable and skillful in certain areas than I am because they're great to have around.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Oh, like
Uh,
it's absolutely. I remember even way back in the days when I would run supply chain management in the army. I need a certain type of task done, and there were some gurus at it who
oh, yeah.
forgot more than I would ever
Oh,
remember.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, I just need this to happen over here,
Yeah.
and they give me the list of stuff they needed to make it happen, and then it would just magically happen.
It's a little bit like and I think this happens with age, because at some point there are two or three things that happen as we get older. One is we learn and are willing to admit that we don't know everything. Now that it takes experience to be able to say something like that
Yeah.
about yourself and to yourself, and to make it a public statement, because that's in itself a struggle. The other is not only are you admitting something about yourself or so-called hole in your leadership capability, you're also admitting that there are people who are smarter than you are. Doesn't make you less a leader, it makes you a bigger leader or a
Yep.
better leader or someone who could actually call on people to do things that you not only are incapable of doing, but actually should not want to do. That's the issue, is actually standing back and
Yep.
letting it happen. Let someone else do it. And I say it's a factor of age because not because of chronological numbers. It's more about experience. The more experience we have, which does come with time, uh,
Mhm.
the more we're willing to say, this is an opportunity or a question or a possibility. It isn't a defined, definitive, must do kind of thing. It raises more questions than it does answers. And there's tremendous value in that. Jasmine and I took a course this past week, Monday and Tuesday, and we walked away uh, with lots of opinions about it. And it had some very interesting, insightful pieces and elements to it. And it's about another organization we want to partner with. One of the tension points, if I could put it that way, or maybe less obnoxious on my part, a bit of a dysfunction, was the mixture of the group. Most of the group who were participants were students, post-secondary students. And there's a mindset that occurs at certain stages in your life that are not translatable or transferable.
Yeah.
And when you're a student and you're in a student thinks, a thought pattern, you're there to please the authority figure, i.e., the professor or the teacher. When you're a wizened old SOB like me, you ain't pleasing nobody. You're observing, okay, with a fair amount of critical thinking that's going with it. And so the last event, if you will, or action on the last day was presentations of a project that we had to deal with, of which we only have 15 minutes to do the project anyway, which in itself is a whole other issue. But listening to the majority of the people who presented, I just went, I'm so glad I'm not trying to get an A. I don't need an A on my report card. I don't even want to know where my report card is. Just, but it's a mindset. It's the way you think at a certain stage in your life within a context. So it gets us, I know that's a roundabout way of getting to preparedness. And this is what we were talking about before we actually started this session. And that is, it's contingency thinking. And contingency thinking is a little. I always use the analogy, which I find so ironic, from it coming from me, and that is watching somebody in team sports pivoting. It's all about pivoting, and it's pivoting in context at the time when it's necessary to pivot. Right? You don't get the ball down the court in basketball unless you have a team, you know who to trust. There are all those elements of social capital, if you want, if you analyze any team activity, sports team in particular, that then gets into a whole contingency approach to winning. Competitive advantage is about contingencies, not about, I've got the best product in the universe. And that itself is something that businesses and business people really have a hard time with because they're somewhat overstructured. Right.
Because the answer to a lot of the corporate world is a structure, is a process, is a plan, is a report. It's something.
Yeah.
We have a whole, and so to mitigate against the risk that presents, we're going to create a plan.
Exactly.
And then we're going to periodically train that plan.
Yeah.
And I've been in this field for slightly over a decade, and I've yet to see any event happen that mirrors what you thought would happen in your plan.
No,
Right? It's and a lot of organizations do that because that's more relied to compliance measures. Right? So, and some of it's even tied to your in business insurance. Do you have contingency plans,
yes.
contingency operations?
Yes.
Have you run these annual exercises can influence the rate
Right.
for your insurance? But the real benefit is rolling all the way back to what you said about leadership. It's about people. It's about
Yes.
having the right people in the right positions, but it's the trust.
Yes.
You can't micromanage a crisis situation.
Yeah.
You will fail and fail every time.
Right.
And
Right.
I've 20 plus years in the Army has taught me that on myriad of occasions. You micromanage the building and the construction and the education and the training of the team. But
Yes.
when the balloon goes up, when the shizzy hits the fizzy, when the day happens, it will only be successful if you trust your team to make the decisions and execute what needs to get done. And this is the latest version of business continuity is traditionally emergency preparedness for business. There's whole consulting firms that will do reports and returns. And I've got some good friends in that field, and it's valuable for larger businesses.
Yep.
The problem is what it creates a set of plans that go on the table. So when we have a cyber attack, let's pull down our cyber attack plan. When we have a disruption in a distribution center, let's pull out that plan. Adaptive business continuity is the latest string off in the genre, the anomaly, if you will say. And it's all about the idea that actually where we earn success is leveraging the training of our teams.
Yes.
Less so for specific incidents, more so for the ability to manage the crisis response in the incident. So I don't necessarily need to teach my team how to do 17 different things. I need them how to work together, trust each other, and that I as a leader empower them to make those decisions. Because they're trusted. And when you do that, you spend quote unquote far less money for a far bigger result.
Well,
When you invest in the human and the training of the interactions in the team, vice the plan it produces.
Yeah. Again, the irony, I keep laughing at myself when I use team analogies because I wouldn't know sports if it ran me over, of any kind, personal, individual, team, spare me. But as an observer, as an observer of behavior, that's the most important because this is the people side. It's about how people will behave or can behave in a given context. That's the piece. So when we say training people, well, actually, we're trying to get people to be adaptive, pivoting again in sports world. Uh, no matter how often you practice, no matter what your game plan is, and I'm sure you all have, they have the book. This is
Yeah.
our strategy versus, you know damn well it all depends on the context. You know, how much mud is in the field, for how much rain, how much sweat is on the boards in a basketball situation. What is the ambient temperature in the hockey rink? Like, I hate to say it, these are all out of control. You have no control over that. That is context. Unless you're the person who's going to control the ambient temperature and the hardness of the ice in a hockey situation, then even there, I would question whether you're being effective or not, because you are working from a plan rather than working inside of a context where you want your people to be adaptive. And they have to adapt to the situation. They have to trust that that particular skater, forward or otherwise, is somebody that can take the puck and move, has the
Yeah.
talent and the capability. That's what the team relationship is. So if we look at social capital in terms of relationships, well, what is called relational social capital, we're talking about trust. We're not
Got it.
talking about plans. We're talking about trust. You trust
Yeah.
that that person can do something, you know. And this is the part that I find challenging when dealing with and in many of our own programs at the Logistics Institute. It's not the program that's challenging, it's getting people to think in adaptive ways. And it's about a mindset. That's difficult. You
Yeah.
know, we're in a concrete set or a planned set, or this is the way it has to happen. And that's it, period. This is, it still runs against what I call the standard operating procedure. Again, my interpretation versus anybody else's interpretation. For me, standard operating procedures are not, salute and follow procedures. They are meant to guide people, mainly because the biggest problem with SOPs is that the frontline worker, will find a way to get around it because it's designed in such a way that it doesn't work anyway. So, so what are you trusting here? The document or
Yeah.
the people?
And this is where, in the Army, we always had the same conversation about doctrine. Doctrine dictates how we do what we do, and there's a very good reason why. And there's 130 years of experience built into the
Yep,
doctrine. So,
yep.
yeah, we do it this way. Now, how you execute that is
Ah,
the freedom of movement given to the leader.
okay.
What you execute, doctrine dictates, and you can't argue that. And so, what doctrine gives you is the framework, as we like to colloquially say, it gives you the sides of the sandbox in which you're allowed to play.
Yeah,
But inside that sandbox,
yeah,
how you build that sandcastle is up to you.
yes.
You just don't have a choice. You must build a sandcastle. So by sticking to that kind of thing, it's kind of I find it is because a lot of people are very uncomfortable with uncertainty
Ah,
in their business models, in how they do their job, in how the
yeah,
day is going to work out.
yeah,
You know, even if it's a challenging day and there's a lot of work, if there's a
yep,
sense of certainty to it, a sense of
yep,
structure, a sense of
yep,
organization,
yep,
people will dive in with 2 feet and they'll get after it.
right.
And this is why I find it, I always try to make my students in the graduate program that I teach in somewhat uncomfortable at times. And I intentionally give them this one project and I call it the 150 challenge. And so basically what it is we often enter new businesses or new fields and there's a structure there. And we often
Oh,
don't understand why that structure
yep,
exists.
right.
And then we live in the structure for a while and we either learn why the structure exists, like people who join the army, they don't know why we do it this way. And then after a while, they understand, yeah, okay, this does make sense. Now we can tweak a whole
Yeah,
bunch of stuff,
yeah,
but the big picture makes a whole world of sense.
right.
So I say to my students, I said, okay, it, students are in the emergency management field. The government organizes emergency management as a government function like this.
Mhm.
Here's 150 people, and here's your $2 million non-labor budget. If you had to reorganize it from start without without the current structure, what would it look like? So if you had to set up your deliverables are exactly the same. So I'm not changing your deliverables. I'm just changing the how. And then
Mhm.
asking the students to throw out the baby with the bathwater
Mhm. Mhm.
and to rebuild a structure that from there, because most of these graduate students have a decade or so of experience to some degree or another, and then to reconstruct it in the way that they would. And it's really interesting to this date. I have yet to have one student build it back similar to what it is.
How interesting.
Now, maybe it's something to do with the individuals who are pursuing graduate education that look at it differently. But it's saying, you know, you still have to deliver the same service
Yeah,
to your customer base.
right.
But how you do it, in other words, saying, because we face a reality like a lot of other disciplines do in the government, there's no more money.
Mhm.
So you can cry and ask for more money as many advocacy groups will continue to do so, but there isn't.
Mhm.
So it's not about doing more with less. It's about doing something, doing it differently. And is
Yeah,
there, and I
yeah,
don't know whether the answer is yes, but is there
yep.
a more efficient way or a more effective way or a different way? I don't like to say better because better
No,
constitutes that we're doing it wrong now.
yes.
A different way of executing the task within the same resources that could get better results. And because for me, that's the whole measure of uncertainty. I'm taking them out of the scope that they
Yep,
understand, the
yep.
framework that they understand, the way things are they're done, that they've adopted, they've hoisted aboard, they understand, they operate very well within that framework,
Mhm. Mhm.
and people are good at that. It's like
Mhm.
a great I forget, I don't know if you ever listen to Warren Kinsella, the
Yes,
former retired call, and he says, and Matt Gurney says the same thing on the line that the federal government is really good at executing something it's already doing.
yes,
The public service are incredibly poor at trying something new.
yes. No, impossible.
But that's very much like a
Yes,
lot of us. We get
yes,
inside a system, we get comfortable operating in the system.
yes, yes,
Uncertainty levels are very low. And if there's a lot of
yes.
work, we just get after it and get it done. But I find when you push people to that, but when you do that, you trust them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing things that I've seen happen in different parts of the leadership field. When you take a team and tell them it's okay to break the mold, how would you do this better?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yes.
I've many times found all kinds of different incredible things that I never thought of.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
again, like we said, surrounding by people who know more
yeah,
about this than I
yeah,
do,
yep,
I see a bottleneck, a problem, an issue, or something.
yep,
I'm not solving this on my own.
yep, yep, yep,
Oh yeah, it's
yeah,
so powerful to
yeah,
put people
yeah.
through exercises like that.
Yeah, well, picking up on some of the words you use, you used the word doctrine, for example, in a military context, that word can be used in so many places, whether it's religious or non-religious. I mean, and it depends on how stringent you want to be. And what's fascinating about that is it, it's summarized. Any structured approach is summarized in the question, what do we need to do? Period. What? And there's a certain level of expectation around that. We need to do this, whatever it is. Often enough, we don't understand why, because that's too big a question. The rationale as to, that goes into what it is we need to do, that's buried in decades of experience, 100 and some odd years of, here's who we are. We're not asking you to examine the why. We're asking you to deliver on the what. Okay, that's basically what we want you to do. Right? How you do it is the pivoting point.
Yeah.
Right? Just by the very, the example he uses, building a sandcastle. There is an expectation you're going to build a sandcastle without anybody telling you what that castle needs to look like. What's a castle? Well, it depends on how you understand what
Yeah.
that is.
Your frame. Yeah.
It's your frame of reference. Then when you get down to it is, how are you going to do it? All right. Sand can be, when it's wet, can be shaped. When it's not wet, it blows away. Okay. And then you get into the issue of if you build your sandcastle too close to the shore, you're liable never to finish it. I mean, these are the hows, right? And these are the things that need to be dealt with. It's the when and the where that goes with the how, right? And this is the almost ordinariness of meeting expectations without being prescribed on, what needs to be done or how it needs to be done.
Yeah.
All right. Now, once we begin to think in those terms, and it sounds so esoteric, but it's actually dealing with people as mature adult human beings, especially in the workforce, military or otherwise. Okay, there's the wet behind the ears newbie. We all know that. The young lieutenant coming out of Royal Military College isn't exactly going to, be the frontline officer with any respect, but is told, quite frankly, up front, pay attention to your 2IC. All right. And if you don't, you're going to be in deep S. All right. Because your people are going to look at you like you're some kind of a prima donna, arrogant son of a bitch, or just stupid. And those are just three options of probably a whole range of options. And listen, I've never been in the military, but I certainly know the culture because I've worked with Canadian military for about 10 years. And it's kind of obvious that it translates into business, translates into life. I mean, when you have a brilliant 5-year-old who's incredibly articulate, that person is wonderful to listen to, have fun with, but they're not going to cook dinner. Sorry, it ain't going to happen. I don't give a damn what you think they're capable of doing. Right? So there are some pragmatic and practicalities that have to come to the forefront of a decision that then gets us into mindsets around preparedness. I mean, my favorite kicking organization to kick, of course, TTC, public transit. I had a meeting this morning with a young person, and it was in the office, was about her career, her resume and portfolio and so on. It was a very, very interesting meeting, very interesting young lady. New Canadian, very smart. But I planned to be in the office, until we had our session at 1:30. And then I realized, well, she and I finished in a half hour. And I didn't want to do any work. So,
No,
come on, damn. I'm gonna
uh,
sit in the office,
not on the 19th of December.
no, not on the 19th of December or for some time. And so I decided, okay, I've got almost 2.5 hours. I could go take the TTC home. It's middle of the day. Damn, this is great. I can go grocery shopping and, I can do all of these chores and I can get home in more than enough time to be ready for our 1:30 session. Until the subway stopped,
Yep.
period. And you go, now what's my contingency plan there? What's my preparedness there? And I had no control over TTC. I had no control over the fact that there was smoke in one of the stations. I had no control. It could have been a fire. It could have been, and TTC had no control over that either. So I could yell at them, scream, and do whatever I want, but that's kind of stupid. I may be many things, but stupid isn't one of them. And and so I realized that I had close to 2 hours, if not more. My contingency was that you just sit there. Could you go do grocery shopping? Well, you might have to do that tomorrow.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
is the world going to come to an end because the plan I had when I left the office was not going to be executed? Well, I could have tied my knickers in a knot and, had a meltdown. But
Yep.
what's the point?
What does that achieve?
Yeah, other than getting my knickers in a knot, which is
Yep.
really uncomfortable.
Yeah, or get yourself on somebody's
Oh,
YouTube thing or
a
short
rant. Yeah,
because you have a rant or something against it. Well, welcome to the 10,000 people today that had a rant against the TTC for some reason or another,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Every time I think about contingency, it's all about thinking. And
yeah,
and in the education that I do, and in the corporate work that I do, it's all about telling people that understanding contingency is understanding what you think you might do. And the phrase that I use all the time is, what does your world look like when you lose access to?
yes.
That's all I want you to do. I want you to
Yep,
think what your world would look like when you lose
yep.
access to the TTC. I don't want you to draw up a whole plan.
No, no,
That's pointless.
no.
I don't want you to draw up a whole bunch of steps to follow.
No,
Pointless.
you can't actually.
Exactly. What I want you
You
to do is
can't.
just, and it's an old Stoic philosophy. You sit down and you think about what discomforts may occur today and how
Mhm.
you might handle them with your morning coffee, and then you carry on. The
Yeah,
maybe not with your morning coffee, but the whole idea is you have a contingency of, what how does the institute keep going when you lose access to your building?
yes, yeah.
Because that's beyond your control. It could be
No, yeah,
for and
exactly.
10 reasons. But you don't have to draw up this whole plan. You just have to
No,
think in your head
no,
as a
yeah,
leader and with the team, what does our world look like when we have to do this
yeah,
remotely or
yeah.
somewhere else?
It is actually without embracing certain situations as normative, because if it were, then it's just a plan that you need. They're not normative, but they do occur on a regular basis. So that's the difference. So it's a regular occurrence versus a normative situation. Oh, here in Toronto, as big as it is and as so-called sophisticated as it is, and I say so-called, in the summertime, because of the increased use of hydro or electricity, because of air conditioning, uh, you have rolling brownouts. Now people say, well, that doesn't mean anything. Well, yes, it does, because that has an impact on your computer system. A brownout, not a total blackout,
Nope.
just a brownout. You say, well, what's a brownout? Well, a brownout is when you don't have full access to hydro or electricity at a given point in time. You may be in the middle of I don't know, a document, and all of a sudden it'll just go zip, and you go, did I lose anything? Or what happened here? Or often enough, it happens on a weekend when you're not even there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
walk in on a Monday morning and everything is black. You know, the little so-called tiny light is not on. You go, oh, oh, what the hell does that mean? And for a computer, and since you started by saying you had to download and upload and recharge and do whatever the hell else you had to do, and Microsoft didn't cooperate, well, who says it had to?
Well,
You're not
exactly.
in control,
Yep.
you know. And the way I know the things are slightly out of control is in the office. I mean, the computer often enough goes back on. That's not the issue. That's pretty straightforward. It may take a little bit of time, but it's the Keurig coffee maker. Because when it goes out, it has to reprogram itself when I want my damn cup of coffee when I walk in, and it is not going to cooperate.
No.
Go, damn you, where's my coffee? And it's just, you just have to sit there and wait for it to catch up.
So
Why?
this is why you test your contingencies, as today's cup of coffee is a pour over. But I'm a Keurig guy. So periodically I maintain my pour over skills. So when the Keurig machine doesn't work, I can use boiled water. Now, as a good preparedness guy, that doesn't require power because
Oh,
I have multiple different ways of boiling water without access to power.
interesting. You
So
must
I
have
will
gas.
always have access to a hot
Okay.
cup of coffee.
So you must have gas in the house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I've got
But
natural gas.
your stove is gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, ours is all electric. Our building is 100% electric.
But even if the natural gas goes away,
Yeah.
that's but one of the many dominoes I have to make boiling water.
You have a backyard, you could probably go out and fire up the barbecue and boil water.
Well,
I,
actually, my barbecue doesn't have a side burner, so that one's down. But I've got several versions of camping stoves. I've
I
got a
was
wood
just gonna
fired,
say, yeah,
like, because
yes,
contingency for me
yeah,
is the fact that the power out does not mean I should lose access to hot coffee,
no, no, I
right?
agree.
I don't accept that I have to make that change in my life, right? And when you're talking about power outages with working, and again, because I'm a guy who runs on the internet, this computer that I'm working on right now is an iMac, a 24-inch standard desktop computer.
Right,
I have a laptop
yeah,
that doesn't require power. It works for, 10 or 11 hours without power. I have a
yeah,
cell
so do I.
phone.
Yeah,
I can create a hotspot with my cell phone.
yeah,
I don't need the power to carry on internet activities
yeah, yeah,
because I have a backup power system in my house
yes,
that a lithium power bank that I
yeah,
can hook my modem up. So the
yeah.
power doesn't have to be on for me to have internet in the house. So
Mhm.
the contingencies is that there are very few things that are quite impactful to me. Very few. And so coffee being one of them, people can think whatever they want, but to me, coffee is exceptionally important. I don't have contingencies for the other 150 things that could happen in my day. But I have absolute contingencies for the loss of two things: hydropower and coffee.
Well, I'm not as lucky or prepared. Let's say I'll use the term prepared as you are because I don't camp. I don't have a camper, and even if I could and did, I could not use it in a building like this. It's against the law in the city, so I don't have a backyard or an outdoor or anything like that.
You
But,
just need a
but
power bank.
all right, yeah, okay. I can go up to the roof garden where we have propane barbecues. So I could do if I needed.
In February?
Yeah, if I needed to. You can barbecue in February. You know that. Come on,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
not the tundra.
Oh no, I dig out my barbecue just as fast as I dig out the front deck.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. But but the other maybe this is me as opposed to you where you have all of these things you can plug in and I don't. I just go, okay. That's finished for the day.
Yeah.
Um, can't do anything else. Maybe I'll go for a walk if it's still light, or maybe I'll go for a walk even if it's dark. Because at that point, it's a case of what the hell are you going to do? You can't do what you would normally do if everything just shuts down.
And this is the $100 million question, as they like to say, is two different lenses in looking at preparedness. One is I want to set myself up for so when events happen,
Mhm.
I have nominal levels of disruption,
Mhm.
or I'm just gonna roll with it and I'm gonna just do something else and hang out and wait for it to fix itself.
Well, unless it's Armageddon and we've just had a nuclear attack, which I won't survive anyway, in an urban situation, I'll be melted like everything else, so that really doesn't matter anymore. Um, um, a situation, hey, listen, you come to reality and you just look at it in the face and you just go, okay. Uh,
So you don't have your radiation pills?
oh God, give me a
Any
break.
radiation pills?
No, stop.
Okay.
I don't live near a nuclear power plant, but there's a story around that. I don't, there are points in one's life, and I'm at that point in my life where there are certain things that I could just simply shrug off.
Yeah.
There are people who are much younger than I am by decades who can't do that. I mean, if I don't have a baby in swaddling clothes that needs to be taken care of. I don't have someone who needs their, iron lung or their oxygen tank or their oxygen. We actually had a neighbor here who, when we did have a blackout, the biggest issue was he had a hard time breathing because his tank was attached to the
Power supply.
power supply,
Yeah.
and he didn't have a contingency.
Yeah.
So, unless it's going to be forever, the blackout, there are certain things you just walk away from. And I know it's difficult to do, but again, I get back to the mindset when I take the TTC. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen. I
Yeah,
used to get
absolutely.
angry, but I don't get angry anymore. Why? What the hell's the point?
And and that aging thing is so true. And it's funny how when I was 25 and was given advice by a 55-year-old, I just laughed it off. What do they know? What have they experienced? And now that I'm approaching that, being that 55-year-old, looking at the 25 and saying, this is, you could do some things about this. And they're like, yeah, what do you know? It's funny how that comes around.
Yep.
But you have these set of experiences to realize, you know what? Like getting angry, be, driving yourself nuts with road rage does
Oh,
what?
nothing.
How does that improve your day? How does that make you feel better?
No.
Why do you want to? But people have this incessant desire to impose their level of anger on other people. I want you to understand how angry I am. You need to know how angry I am. And I'm like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why?
What?
Number one, why would I care how angry you are? But number
Exactly.
two, because I'm certain you don't care how angry I am.
No.
It's
No.
like people spend their life worried about keeping up with the Joneses, and the Joneses don't even know you're alive.
No. No.
And guess what? The Joneses are broke. So, you
Yes.
know, the whole idea of, but again, when you're 25, you're in a rat race and you're trying whatever
Yes.
your field
Yes.
is. When you
Yes.
get near the end of the rat race of the
Yes.
professional side of it,
Yeah.
you realize that it was dumb, but it's just the way the system works. And now you're like, okay, it doesn't really matter.
No.
And so I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to say what I want, and the chips are going to fall where they may, and life goes on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's too many people get wrapped around the axle of what other people will think or what other people. It's like that conversation you had about the resume and the CV in the morning.
Yep,
Like I've had this conversation with my kid, and he's like, I don't know if I have the right qualification. And I said, the world cares about your skills, not your qualifications.
exactly.
Unless you have a very specific set of professions that require a standard.
Exactly.
Set
Exactly.
those aside. The other 94% of the working public cares about what you're able to do,
That's
not
right.
what letters you have, what
That's right.
not your post nominals. And
That's right.
so if you have a skill set and you think it's worthy, you've got to get out there. You've got
Yep.
to show the world. I was
Yep.
listening on this morning before I went for my weekly massage. I know it's a tough life I live. I was
Yeah.
on the treadmill for a half an hour or so, but I was listening to a podcast from a famous voice, and he was talking about the fact that if you're an entrepreneur and you're making less than $1 million a month, the odds are the world doesn't know you exist. They just don't know you're there.
Yeah.
And the whole job of an entrepreneur is to tell the world you're out there, so they know you and they know you're in a field and they know what you have to offer, because they're not going to randomly stumble across you. It's the same with skills. You may be the best graphic designer in the world from your basement, but if nobody knows you exist, what's the
Hmm.
value of your skill set?
That's
Because the
right.
value is how other people perceive your skills, not how you do. And if the
Yes.
world sees value in it, so, the conversation where you and I have spent most of our professional lives getting qualifications, certifications, degrees, etc., because that's what the check in the box was. The world's kind of moving more towards a skill base.
Well, it's a case of again, it's that adaptive mindset. It's really skills based. That's what it is. It's not contingency mindset. That's a plan. That's a document. It's all 19 volumes of it up on the shelf that nobody reads.
Yeah.
Along with the multiple clauses in a third party insurance policy that nobody understands except the lawyer who wrote it, and he's owned by the insurance company. So spare me.
And you're not winning that fight.
You wait, no, it just doesn't happen.
No.
So, what we're talking about again, thinking of your son, thinking of this young lady this morning, it's that need to prove ourselves. And yes, you're young, you need to demonstrate you can do something. And notice what I just said, that you can do something. You have skills,
Yeah.
competencies, whatever term. Doesn't matter where. For example, she worked at Tim's. Nothing wrong with Tim's. Wonderful. You're young. You should go out and do that. Mickey D jobs, that's fine. What actually is the value of working at a place like that? Customer service, preparing the back room, in terms of orders and inventory and so on, so that customers can buy what they want when they walk in because they're off the street kind of businesses. Your primary focus in a Mickey D or Timmy Horton's job is about the customer, right? And that's a skill set all kinds of people have zero
Yeah.
awareness of, never mind experience in. I said, yes, you're young, but think in terms of a skill set around customers and meeting customer requirements. I didn't use the word demand because in a retail world, customers are a pain in the ass anyway, but that's beside the point. Being able to deal with the obnoxious customer is a skill set. It's about how do you handle human behavior that's off the wall, and no matter how young you are,
Yeah.
right? It's about being the camp counselor who's got to deal with, of 25 kids in a cabin who are okay, let's be kind, Victor, who are, adolescents who don't know anything about deodorant or stuff like that.
Yep.
And you're dealing with them and you're living in the same place with them. And you have to deal with the fact that they get into fights and etc. It's learning how to understand human behavior and what to do. That is such an incredible skill set. because most of us don't have it.
No.
In the military, again, I'm going to make an assumption here. You could tell me where I go wrong, but the higher up in rank you go, the more you have to consider the people who report to you, because that is your success. They are your success.
Yeah.
It's not because you order them around. Oh, spare me, will you? There are more ways to get around an order than there are orders, and everybody knows it. Talk about contingencies. It's about trust. It's about loyalty. It's about putting people first. If you aren't someone who, as a young lieutenant, wet behind the ears and totally inexperienced, who has to command people who are older than you are, more experienced than you are, and probably drink more heavily than you possibly ever could, you know, um, you have to learn to observe, watch behavior, and make use of that wisdom. I'll call it knowledge because you're too young to have wisdom. That knowledge in order to command.
And this is why they've often got the phrase of a command team together,
Yes.
because it's a pairing that works. Now, there's two different ways to do it. You have a command team, but only one person is in charge, and that's absolutely true. When I was a company commander, my company sergeant major and I were a command team, but I was the only one in charge.
Well, no,
Right,
it's about,
absolutely,
yeah,
without question.
no,
But
it's about responsibility, ultimate
right,
responsibility.
ultimate
That's right.
responsibility,
Right.
absolutely everything that happened in
That's right.
there, I was responsible for.
Exactly.
And because if people did things wrong, then I didn't have the appropriate training plan in place
Right.
to train them appropriately. Or I
Mhm.
didn't give the time and space in the training calendar to
Mhm.
allow the sergeant major to ensure that the troops had the appropriate, like
Right.
everything, the buck stopped with me. But
Right.
you realize that once you get into that senior rank, and you're absolutely right, and most, not all, but most understand that my company is successful not because I'm brilliant.
No. No.
My company is successful because I have made it crystal clear to my subordinates what it is they need to achieve.
Exactly.
I've given them the freedom to think differently about
Yes.
doing that.
Yeah.
And to the
Right.
greatest extent possible, because it's never 100% of what you need, but to the greatest extent possible, I have given them both the time and the resources
Yes.
to support that.
Yeah.
But I was only ever successful in the missions that I was assigned throughout my career, because of the people around me. Now, there's always a few cases where it's me and two
Yeah.
people in a room,
Yeah.
and you can really influence that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about, 85 soldiers in the field
Yeah.
supporting whatever the operation may be,
Yeah.
that's not happening because you're incredible,
Mm.
right? It's
No.
because and it's not even, and sometimes it's not even surrounding you by the right people, because yeah, the army gives you people.
Mhm.
They're not
Mhm.
necessarily the right
No.
people,
No.
right?
No. That's
But
right.
it's as an old boss of mine used to say, sometimes you get a bag of hammers and
Yes.
everybody thinks the world's a nail, and you have to figure out how to solve the problem. Welcome to leadership. And that's what he would just leave it at. Right.
Uh,
And
yes.
so the truth of the matter is, you don't always get the people you need. You rarely get the resources, and either human or financial, to
Right.
execute the task. You frankly almost never have the time frame to do it. Welcome to leadership.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
if
yeah.
you don't understand that leadership is a team sport with only one person ultimately accountable, which is
That's
why in
right.
the NHL they fire the coach.
That's right.
They don't
Yes.
fire the players,
No, no, no. It's
right?
not the team. It's not the team captain who goes to the wall.
No,
No,
it's not. No, not
coach.
at all. No, they have a position of authority, but
Yes.
no, it's
No,
the
no.
coach gets fired. The head of the organization gets fired.
Yeah.
And this is really where the US Navy did a fantastic job of turning around their leadership culture problem they had after tailhook, if you remember a couple decades ago with their tailhook problem they had. Do you know what that one is?
No.
So there's an annual convention of naval folks that get together, mainly naval aviators, and tailhook is the part of
Oh,
fighter
yes.
jet that hangs down and catches the wire on the aircraft
Yep.
carrier.
Yep. Yep.
Well, there was a lot of, shall we say, countercultural, suggestive behavior against females as part of the conference. And because cell phones became a reality, it all got out in the open. And so the US Navy was really the best military example of being successful at this because they fired everybody responsible. And now, if you file an expense claim wrong in command, you're fired.
Mm-hmm.
They demand absolute, unquestionable ethical and moral leadership out of everybody who's given the privilege of commanding because they turn that back to you didn't earn this job. You're being afforded a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they realized that firing the corporal who was doing dumb things is pointless because
Yeah.
it's the leader who allowed that to exist
Yes.
that needs
Yeah.
to go. And the
Yep.
US Navy to that, there's been a lot of argument in the Canadian military that that's the point that our culture problem is missing is they're not hacking leadership who's failing to build a solid because it's not about courses people have to take. It's about
Mm.
demonstration of leadership.
Yeah.
That's a whole, but the whole idea is that it's very much a function of the humans that you have around you. You don't, it's like, the dog's the only member of the family you get to choose. Like, really, it is. Like, I had kids. I don't get to choose whether I like them or not, or whether I keep them or not, right? Like, your family is what it is. The dog and the cat are the only ones you like that you actually get to choose. And if you don't like them, you can give them back, right? So leadership is the same thing. You get the people you have. What you do with that bag of hammers, as my old boss used to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
is a pure demonstration of your leadership capability.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things on that. I had in my varied and long career, I knew people from First Nations, especially out of Six Nations in the Brantford area, and fascinating people. This one fellow actually came from a very prominent member of the nation. His name carried fair weight, and he used to refer to the chief and council as dumb as a bag of hammers. And he said he was so frustrated. He said you couldn't, because he was an entrepreneur. He actually created businesses that were businesses that carry corporate liability, which is very unusual for a First Nations business. All right, because they're usually protected by the Indian Act.
Yeah.
And so he had a degree in economics and so on, and business and so on. And he would just sit there going, these are people going through the paces because the Indian Act says that for you to get the money that the government has set aside for you, you have to act in such and such a way.
Yeah.
Okay. And he said that actually is the worst part of the First Nations experience. He said it's not leadership. And even when they do leadership programs and courses about how to be a leader in the nation, it's really about how to deal with the bureaucracy, which is the federal government. That's leadership. And no, it's not leadership, but that's neither here nor there. You're also caught in a situation where you can't suddenly just take up, your stakes, fold the tents, and walk away. Sorry, this is reality. You're stuck. All right. But that in itself was always interesting when you use the reference, bag of hammers. I always think, dumb as a bag of hammers, as opposed to I've got a bag of hammers and I have a bunch of people who are looking for nails in order to, knock the crap out of everything. And you go, okay, stop, boys and girls. Okay, let's not do that. But I love your analogy and your discussion of, you can't send your family back.
No.
You're, and in to use a terrible term, you're stuck with them. That's it.
Yep.
Full stop. Unless, of course, you're Uncle Victor, right? And I'm the one who's adopted by all the families that I know as the favorite uncle because none of them is tied to me
Nope.
by blood or any other reason. And so they could turn it off anytime they want, and I could turn it off anytime I want. And it's a case of choice, which is very unusual from a family point of view.
Yep.
Because any family that is blood related, dynastic in any way, you can't do that.
Nope.
You're stuck.
Nope. Which is why one of the phrase terminology that I've been using lately and some of the work that I've been doing is the world is made up of areas of influence.
Yes.
And I figured out there's five of them. And so you have political, economic, cultural, and ideological. You have natural, and then you have familial. And when I frame disaster management, I'm saying you say that word and then disaster. People don't really sit back and think that familial disasters are real, they're
Ooh.
impactful, and they can significantly alter your business and your
Oh,
personal life. Everybody's worried about the flood and the earthquake, but
no.
nobody's worried
Yeah.
about the family disaster, the
Oh,
impending uh, collapse of whatever empire, whatever family dynamics that there may be. And I said, like, I just completed a new project and we launched a new course in the company this week on uh, business continuity for solopreneurs. So single solo individuals running their own business can't afford a $2,500 business continuity consultant, and the plan would just sit on the shelf anyhow. And one of them is understanding how your business is exposed to your family dynamics
oh yeah.
and how a significant change in your family dynamics
Oh
could
yeah.
impact your budding little business in the basement that you're trying to grow and nurture, et cetera. And people think, oh, I just got to worry about a cyber attack.
Mm,
No,
no.
you might have to consider that, sure,
Mhm.
but you don't think just that and dismiss the familial or the cultural or the ideological or all these other areas of our lives that are just as influential.
It's one of those things that often enough we assume, and that's the worst word we could possibly apply to anything we do, is just even if it's disruptive and destructive and whatever the term you want to use, it's considered normal. And you go, yes, it might be normal that you hate your brother or your sister and they hate you. That's fine. Sibling rivalry and never, ever getting out of the sandbox, no matter how old you are. And fighting over toys that you probably well, let's move on. I have that problem in my family, uh, my blood family. You just stop and go, how far are you going to allow this to influence what it is you want to do, not what you need to do,
Yeah.
but what do you want to do, right? We each have our own objectives and goals, which is those are two words I absolutely hate. We have desires and dreams, okay? Um, those are more human and humane. Uh, and by the very fact that you shared a bedroom with a sibling as you were growing up, there's no guarantee that the two of you actually like each other or ever liked each other.
No.
And to make that assumption is we think that it should be because the normal family in the United States, the Norman Rockwell family, sitting around the table having turkey at Thanksgiving is at best a fiction, and worse, a lie. Nonetheless, we live in those hopes and dreams that it's got to be better, when in reality, it never is.
Yeah.
and never will be. That's the other side. You ain't going to correct the problem. It ain't going to go away, and there is no solution. Okay, period. It's like someone, marrying an alcoholic or someone who's drug addicted and say, I'm going to cure them. You can't. They have their own problems, and it's also a biophysical disease along with all kinds of other components to it. You aren't the doctor here.
No.
And the relationship between you and them is not medical. Okay? Wake up. It just ain't going to happen. Now,
But
if
we're
you're
always trying to fix people.
okay, totally. And that's our so-called do-goodedness. And when in reality, I think it's much worse. We actually make it worse. There was a great radio play, and I'm not giving my age away. It was repeated many times during my life. I was not raised, sitting in front of the big radio in the 1930s. But there was a radio play that was just brilliant, and it was about who's the most humane person in this particular scenario. There was an old person, I think it was an old man, with a very old dog on the edge of dying. And there was a young person and a young girl who said, we have to keep the dog alive. And then there was a gentleman, a man, who said, no, let's put the dog down. And this became a big debate in the whole story as it went back and forth. Who was the more humane? Who was the kinder
Yeah.
of the two? All right. And the voiceover ultimately said it was the man who said, shoot the dog.
Yeah.
And everybody went, oh, you can't do that. I said, well, actually, death is part of reality, and the dog is suffering. What's more humane here, allowing it to continue to suffer or to put it out of its misery? And and what was the point of the other person demanding that the dog be kept alive? Is it because they felt good? Well, you may have felt good, but the dog didn't feel good.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, yeah.
And the old person was debating which one to do. So it's will the dog be missed by the old person? Yes. But that's part of life. All right.
Yeah.
To keep the dog alive just because, hmm, that's kind of cruel. Uh,
Yep.
and so when we think of families, cruelty is probably a major component of family life.
Yeah, and reality is, I mean, I always use the dog analogy because the dog is the only one you get to choose, but it's the one you can't keep,
That's right.
right? And that's just a great lesson for, you
Yes.
know, it's
Yes.
the one you choose and it's the one you probably like the most, let's be
Yes.
honest. Well, it's that old joke. A buddy of mine told me this once. He said, lock your spouse and the dog in the trunk of the car for 5 minutes, open it up and see who's happy to see you. Right?
Oh,
Come on. I've never done that, nor would I recommend anybody does
no,
that.
I hope this is being recorded. I hope nobody walks away with
There's
that
no evidence.
suggestion
I mean, I've
saying,
never done
what
that.
a great idea. No, folks, I'm warning all of you out there who's going to be listening to this. Don't you dare do that.
But it's back like the ultimate attempt to fix people, right? It's that old computer saying WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. It's that at a certain age, like as you're growing up, you're trying to impress other people, you're trying to gain membership in groups, you're trying to act in ways that are norms of the group so that you're
Right,
adaptive and you're
right.
accepted. And you get to a certain point in your life, and not a necessary age, but usually a level, certain enough experiences where you're like, no,
Yeah,
WYSIWYG.
yeah. Don't give a crap anymore.
Here I am.
Yeah,
You get the freedom to choose whether this is something you want to negotiate,
right.
talk with, discuss, or have in your life, or as in the modern terms, you swipe left or you swipe right, right?
That's right.
What are you
That's
doing?
right.
And
Yep.
you got to realize that, you know, we always used to have a
Mhm.
group of people that we hung out with as we grew up. And every one of us would likely have some different form of political, economic, familial, cultural viewpoint of the world, but we'd still all get along as friends.
Mhm.
And now that is now that's hard to find, right?
Oh yeah.
Ever, you get the echo chamber camps that everybody wants to drop into,
Right.
and we don't. We almost try to shield ourselves against exposure to ideas and thoughts that are find challenging because
Mhm.
we don't want, God forbid, somebody successfully put something in front of you that makes you wonder why you still hold or believe this thing that you've held true for 20 years. That's
Yeah.
a very uncomfortable
Totally.
place for a lot of people to be. So the easy way of not being uncomfortable is just don't put yourself in a situation
Yeah.
where you're surrounded by people who have different viewpoints than you,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then it's easy. Everybody will be an echo chamber.
Yeah. 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 But to be kind, because it is the holiday season. I have been known to be the Grinch, by the way. My family used to refer to me as the Grinch. Ugh, Christmas, leave me alone. That my blood relatives, not
Yeah.
my current family, they like having Uncle Victor around because he brings presents.
Yeah.
Really. Uh,
Funny
and
how that works.
yeah, isn't it? But it's difficult. I fully understand. We live in, I was gonna say we live in very difficult times, but quite frankly, I don't know when humanity ever lived in not difficult times, undifficult times. It's always been difficult. I mean, everybody has this nostalgia about, oh, way back when it was so much better. No, it wasn't. I still use, and I referred to this in one of our other sessions, I would hate to live in a big city, New York or Paris or London, at a time before the horseless carriage.
Oh, dear Lord, no.
I don't even want to think of the smell. I don't even want to
No.
consider the possibility of what that was like. And never mind what was out on the street as you walked by. I mean, come on, folks, they're horses. They eat. What else do you think they do? All right. And so where do you think it is? And where do you think it's left until it's scooped up? All right. A profession that is no longer in existence. So you just go, there was no best of times. Thank you, Charles Dickens. And there was no worst of times, but there's just times. And there are times now when it's okay, and there are times now when you just go, oh, the shizzy hit the fizzy. What the F am I going to do now? Right. And by the way, that's another characteristic of getting old, and you're nowhere near that. We tend to use street language more.
Mm,
It's a comfort. I think I've used the F word more frequently now than I have when I was half my age, a third of my age.
yeah.
It's just a case of I need to let it out. So there it is. Um, and there is no such thing as the best of times. There is no, even in our own lives, when we were young and fresh and, you know, dewy-eyed and, wet behind the ears, everything was just, hunky-dory. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
No,
No,
no.
no, we had parents who had to go and bust their asses in order to raise us, and then we had siblings who went left, right, up the center, or all over the place. I mean, I what do? You
Yep.
don't, you live with it. That's what you do. And there's preparedness. And there's
You learn how to
preparedness.
adapt to the environment in which you
Exactly.
live.
You
And
learn to live with it.
it's the normative versus positive. And right now we have too much frame on, I'm really angry because the world doesn't look like the way I wish it would or I want it to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so people, instead of framing, this is the world I'm in, how
Yeah.
do I best navigate it
Yeah.
based upon what it is? it just seems like an endless
Yeah,
level of whining and crying and
yeah, yeah,
and disturbed
yeah,
individuals
yeah,
about the state of the
yeah,
world
yeah,
without prescribing something short of massive
yeah, yeah,
structural change to
yeah,
society
yeah,
that has to
yeah,
happen tonight.
yeah.
It just seems like there are people who it's like the quiet millionaire, the
Mhm.
person who drives the Honda Civic, who wears jeans and a sweatshirt, and
Yep,
they're worth 10 million
yep, yep,
because they're practical.
yeah,
This is the world they're in.
yeah, yeah.
They just live like everybody else. And
You,
then
you,
there's the people who are not
pretentious.
like that.
No, pretentious. I mean, there's, the Stoic side to this would be, at what point do we stop blaming the world for our unhappiness when our unhappiness is self-induced? You are happy or
Yeah.
unhappy because of how you actually live in the world, how you choose to live in the world.
Oh
It's a
yes.
choice. You
Yep.
can choose to be unhappy, but it's a choice. It's your
Mm-hmm.
choice. Own it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're unwilling to own it, don't blame the world. Why are you blaming the world? The world is this neutral out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not neutral. Sometimes it's going to just crap all over you. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You that's the whole Stoic thing. One of the most outstanding people, CEOs of TTC, the Toronto Transit Commission, who will go nameless. But this goes back quite a number of decades because nobody does this at TTC, especially at the head office. He was brought in from outside. I think he was an American, and he actually took the subway to work. He was a rider of the TTC. There's nobody in the head office at TTC who gets on the TTC
No.
at all, ever.
Yeah.
Right? And you go, this is a man who was making, I don't know, three, six, seven figures. This is not a man who needed to do this. This is a man who chose to do this. Why? He felt responsible for the service that was being delivered by the company he was the head of.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, when was the last time we had people like that? I don't know. And I don't care. That's not the issue. The issue is no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your life, no matter where you are on your journey to whatever, and even journey words we can talk about, no matter where you are right now, you are responsible, period, full stop. Responsible for how you act, responsible for how you react. You're not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you're responsible for your reaction to it,
Yep.
period. All
Yep.
right. Whether you call that stoicism or you call that pragmatics, I really don't care.
No, I use it as the first question that I ask. The most important question in the world of preparedness is who is responsible for your outcomes?
Right.
And the only answer that's reasonable is you, that incredible person in the
Right.
mirror. That's it.
Right.
And I say in a lot of my podcasts, I say, and if you think something else, an entity or another person is responsible for your outcomes, I wish you the best of luck and enjoy a life. There's nothing I can do to help you, and there's nothing
No,
I have to help you to
no,
offer you.
no.
Because if you believe that it's somebody else's responsibility to pay your bills, to pay your way, to take
Yep.
care of you, to coddle you, to provide you with everything you need,
Yep.
then I wish you
Yep.
the best of luck. There's
Yep.
nothing any of
Yep.
us can do for you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you want to be responsible for your outcomes, if you decide to not become a professional victim, which is a whole career in today's
Oh.
world, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a victim, I'm oppressed, everything's holding me back, people are preventing me from doing the things. It's a culture on fire. If you want to be successful, not everybody starts from the same place. But that doesn't mean you can't be successful,
Yeah.
right? As soon as you accept personal, like if I want to, some of the happiest people I ever met, and I say this all the time. I worked some time in southern New Brunswick and in the Bible Belt, and there were a lot of people there that made family incomes less than $25,000 a year, combining their incomes. Okay, two part-time McDonald's workers. part-time, not even full-time, two part-time together with a couple of kids, the happiest freaking people I've ever met on the face of the earth, give you the shirt off their back because they understood that happiness was a choice and it wasn't equated to the level of resources they had. Once you got over the minimal of the fact that they could feed and house and clothe themselves, they were fine. They were the happiest people I ever met
Mhm.
by far. And the kindest. They give you the shirt off the back. Yeah, very
Mhm.
well. Yeah, every one of their shirts came from the secondhand store, but
Mhm.
they give you the shirt off their back. Fabulous human beings.
Yep.
Absolutely. Not for 1 second did they believe there was a boot holding them down and
Yep.
preventing them from being successful.
Yep.
Not at
Yep.
all. They didn't even cross. You never heard it out of them. And it's so much of a culture nowadays. And part of success, the road to success is clear. It's bumpy, it's windy, it's a challenge. It goes up and down over lots of hills, but it's right out in front of individuals. And they just they just choose for whatever reason not to. And it's,
Yeah.
my son's generation is, I have to give them a lot more credit than I would think. As my son's 23, so he's in that Gen Z to Gen Alpha generation. Okay,
Yeah. I
so
gave up on those categories. I don't care.
so the latest generation entering the workforce has
Oh,
been much maligned.
yes.
When I get to know them and get to know his friends, I realize there's nothing wrong with the generation.
Hmm.
What they're looking for is different than what you and I looked for.
Yes.
So they're seeking something different
Yes.
as a generation, which doesn't make them wrong, which doesn't make them weak,
Yeah.
which doesn't make them lazy. It's just they're not seeking to execute life the way you and I did.
Right.
And the system's not designed to
No.
work well and
Yeah.
accept that. And so
Yeah.
everybody's tearing themselves apart trying to figure out how to accommodate without understanding that it's a generational viewpoint on the world that is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
better, it's not worse.
No.
It's just a different.
No.
And so I'm blessed by having the opportunity to have lots of conversations with 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds in today's world
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
woke me up to realize, okay, that frame that I thought they were all lazy and just didn't want to work
No. No. No.
is is actually no, they're happy to work 16, 18 hour day. They just don't want to do it the way we did.
Yeah. 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 Well, one of my emerging heroes is my nephew Dan, who's going through an unfortunate, nasty divorce. His older son, Hudson, is 16 years old, who's coming into his own. He wears cowboy boots, so as Dan said, he has a swagger. He's tall,
Nice.
he's handsome, so on and so forth. But what I love about him most is his creative individuality. He's not part of a crowd.
Yeah.
And for Christmas this year, I've watched this young man. I knew him when he was like this, Uncle
Yeah.
Victor cradling him. I watched him become an artist. I watched him just his brilliance, and he's not ordinary. Now, I don't want to say he's on some kind of spectrum. I don't understand those things anyway, and I don't like, putting labels on people.
Labels on people. Yeah.
But he is definitely not the ordinary kid, 16-year-old. And as he's coming into his own level of self-confidence, he's absolutely hilarious. Though he, of course, would not admit he's hilarious because 16-year-olds can't admit that they're being funny. Everything is serious. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So for Christmas, I watched him, and I had a whole set of these. He actually is getting into woodwork. I said, oh, and he's got a great uncle, great in terms of generational, not in terms of wonderfulness. He's got a great uncle who has a sawmill. And so he's super interested in the wood that comes out of, the trees, the forest, and the milling and the whatever, and the different, smells and feels. And so for Christmas, I bought him a book on wood. Why? Because I just got 20 of his charcuterie boards that he worked his ass on in order to make sure I got them as Christmas gifts to give out to the rest of my family. Now, this is a young man who smart enough at school, that is not the issue, but his career is not going to be a PhD scholar somewhere.
No, no.
His career is going to have dirt under his fingernails because this is his passion. And I go, he has taught me so much just by observation, just by watching him. I go, damn, I wish I had the confidence that he has at the age that he is.
Yeah, I know.
Because I was this wallflower who couldn't open his mouth without, falling down the stairs. Because I came from a totally different age, a totally different time, a totally different culture where you were expected to be either super bright or a plumber. And they were not equated. They were not equated. They were not the same thing, despite the fact the plumber made a whole lot more money than the super bright guy was going to. But we live in an age, a time where I can respect a young person who has a passion about things that I couldn't have a passion about, yet at the same time is not taking the usual path to success. And
disruptive path. Yeah.
it's a totally unique me. And I think that's the generation you're also talking about. It's the totally unique me. Am I committed? Am I dedicated? Will I bust my ass doing work? Yes, but I'm the one who has to love the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if I don't, it's not about purpose. See, we grew up with purpose. I have to make a contribution, and that's my purpose in life. No. My purpose in life is actually to do something that is worthwhile in terms of my own estimation of what is valuable. Whoa, excuse me, right? We came through, and I'm older than you are. I came through, you have a career and you have an education, which means you have to go and do X, Y, Z. Otherwise, you have failed. We had a sense of success and failure, which was an on-off switch.
Yep. And measurable, clearly measurable by your achievements.
Oh, you've got to be able to live. When I say I live in Forest Hill, people look at me, oh, well, you've achieved the, pyramid. You're at the top of a, no, I have an apartment and, I'm surrounded by $25 million mansions. That's different. And I'm loving it when I say I live in Forest Hill because everybody's eyes go, whoa. And I go, oh, you have no idea. The game I'm playing. But it's the energy of the young that I find both incredible. I'm not going to say positive, incredible, and at the same time challenging. Because I look at them and I go, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. I don't know where to put you. I have a structure that I have to deal with.
And that's the biggest challenge, I think, between the generations right now is we're so well morphed and formed into how things are supposed to be done.
Yes.
And typical measurements that we get now, we're faced with a generation who's doing it differently. Not better, not worse, but differently. And we're like, but hold on, we're the old stalwarts. You're supposed to do what we do.
We know what to do.
Well, I was cold, wet, and hungry, so you have to go through the period of being cold, wet, and hungry. Otherwise, you won't be tough like me.
Yeah, and the answer is the retort to that is, though we would hope our children wouldn't do this, is so why were you so stupid to be cold, wet, and hungry?
Oh yeah, and then we go into some rant of, oh, but you weren't there, you didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's always the explanation is always a bunch of circumstances that you can't nail down in
Of course. Yeah. I had to walk to school through 6 feet of snow. No, you didn't walk through 6 feet. You were only 3.5 feet to begin with. So it all
Yeah.
looked like 6 feet.
Yeah.
Uphill both ways. You can't go uphill both ways.
But
At some point,
we always want to believe that the generation below us has an easier time of it.
of course, because
Because
we gave you all these advantages.
yes, why do you look at all the wonderful things that we did for you in building this incredible
Yep,
society?
yep.
The one that's broken and on the edge of disaster right now, but that's
Exactly. Look at,
okay.
I didn't do it. Well, actually, we did. So,
We did. Our
like,
generation totally
it
effed the world.
it up. Yes. I mean, no two ways about it. And
Oh,
did it multiple times without
yes.
stopping or even
And
thinking about it.
and
So,
we just hit the gas pedal right
yeah.
now
Oh,
once again on the entire train. So,
and by the way, we still hit the gas pedal, even
oh
with
yeah.
electric cars. I mean, sorry. I mean, are they cures? No, that's a whole other topic for 2025,
Yeah.
because we're coming to an end. And I want to end, if you don't mind, with a story of something I did. Because as I said, as I'm getting older, and I don't know if it's about getting older. I think it's a case of um, I got to a point in my life where I no longer give a shit. That's if you don't like me, you don't like me. If you think
Yep.
I'm weird, I don't care. It's your problem, not mine. And I came to that conclusion quite a number of years ago. And one of the things that I did, and this is something I want to end my side of our session on. I don't know if you can see the book back here.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Seuss's "Oh, the Places You'll
Oh,
Go."
I'm familiar with that book.
Yeah.
I've read it to a couple of young children along the
Well,
way.
I did one better than young children. I was asked. The Logistics Institute sponsored a series of youth programs funded by the federal government, and one was a school to work program that was incredibly successful in the Kildonan area of Winnipeg at a school called River East. And the people who actually created the program, Career Internship Program, CIP, is what it's called. And it's an award winner. I mean, the conference board has given it awards almost annually for the last 5 years, 6 years or so. And it was the brainstorm of the faculty, the teachers, plus the principal. They created a school inside of a school. You get a whole bunch of students who now are going to be in a different program, and their courses are going to be their mandated courses will be run in a team-based approach. And these guys, it was two guys who actually were the brainstorm to this. To this day, they're still one of the most brilliant people I've met because they just took a chance. And
Yeah.
that to me is that whole
Yeah.
level of creativity is that preparedness. That's let's take a chance to see if it's going to work. All right. And if the spaghetti, sticks to the wall, then it's ready to eat. And that's what they did. And I encouraged them and I financed them and so on and so forth. But they had this hero worship thing, which used to drive me crazy. Victor, you've got to come out. You got to talk to the students. Oh, I don't want to because I don't like adolescents. Okay, it's as simple as that. Especially in a gang of them all sitting there going,
Yeah.
you don't want to listen to me. Like, give me a break. However, they used to have an annual dinner because these kids also had placements. They had to go out and get a job and so on and so forth. And so all of the companies and the people they worked with, plus their parents, plus all these kids in the gymnasium, all got together and they had this dinner. And so at one of these dinners, they invited me to be one of the keynote speakers. I thought, oh God, what am I going to say to a bunch of adolescents, their parents, and these people who are local, entrepreneurs and businesses? And I'm from Toronto and I'm in the West. I'm in Winnipeg. I'm going, really? Like, that in
Yeah.
itself is a problem. So you're in that situation where you're sitting at the head table. I always hate head tables because everybody's staring at you as you're eating. And I was there with the representative at the federal government. This was during the Mulroney government, was Vic Taves, and he was the treasurer, the head of Treasury Board here in Ottawa, the Minister of Finance. And he was there, and then the somebody from the school board, from the ministry was there, somebody from the school board was there, and then me. Okay. And they all got up and gave their 5 minutes. Oh, well, you're going to go to the future and you're going to have this journey. And, you say this to graduates because these are kids who are going to graduate. And I stood up and I could see one of the teachers looking at me. And he went, no, what the hell is he going to do? I stood up and I took that book out. I opened it up. I said, I'm going to read you a bedtime story. I spoke just like that into the microphone, and I read passages from there for about, you could hear a pin drop in the room. Everybody just stopped. I don't know whether they were staring at me, or I was totally crazy, which I was, or this was so off the wall that they all stopped. And I got a standing ovation at the end. And the minister from the Manitoba government demanded a copy of this. And I said, no, you can't have it. He said, because I have my notes scribbled in it. I said, this one's mine forever. Go buy it. I actually told the Minister of Education to go buy her own copy. Here I am, telling a bedtime or a Dr. Seuss story, reading it to there must have been close to 60 people sitting there. And what that says to me is not a moment of brilliance as a moment of challenge. What do you say that in any way could be meaningful without sounding like a pious, pompous ass?
Yeah.
And I read a Dr. Seuss story.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. There's so much that we don't do well in intergenerational relationships. And I mean, we could have a total separate conversation on the value of intergenerational relationships between just realizing that, again, it's as you said, not coming across as I know best because I've been here 30 years longer than you have, or 40 years or 50 years, or I'm sitting here with a PhD and you're first year undergrad. Just be quiet. I know the right answer. You don't. That's so often. And it happens in the military too. The colonel walks in the room, the full colonel.
Oh, yeah.
And the lieutenant. And I've seen it in the officers' mess in the Army where every one of them are just lauding and applauding everything that comes out of the colonel's mouth. I'm like, do you realize the person is sounding like a bloody fool? And none of you are doing anything but lapdogging it all up as if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I know.
And this individual is a catastrophic danger to all of us.
Sorry.
Oh, I remember.
I've been there. In military, I've been there.
Oh, yeah. And you're listening to these people like, I'm sorry, but if we did half the stuff you're talking about, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. But and I know that it's just like water rolling off a duck's back. No one's going to do anything that this person is suggesting. They're just listening, nodding, smiling, and
So
why make
how do you get engaged? And this is what I've been trying to do when I spoke about talking to my son's friends and trying to understand the much maligned generation. To like, what the hell are they after? So when I understand what they're after, now I can say, okay, how do I relate to this? And I try to do this when I lecture to a bunch of midstream professionals, because this is a applied master's degree, so it's mostly populated by midstream professionals. So they've been doing. I've got a superintendent of the RCMP there. I'm not about to tell them how to run police operations.
God, I hope not.
No, I've got fire captains from fire departments.
Yeah,
What I'm
yeah,
trying to tell you to do is you actually need to work together.
yes,
Like that, what a novel idea. You need to work together.
yeah.
And all these other organizations that exist around you, you're not there to tell them what to do,
Oh, right,
right? Just because you're the police officer doesn't mean you tell everybody what to do.
right,
Because the people around you have been living and working in this area far longer than you ever have.
right,
And they
right,
know more about the world around you than you do.
right.
So get off your horse and start talking to people instead of lecturing to
That's right.
them,
That's right.
giving them something to think about,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's I've always and I didn't come up with this. I got this from a great professor that I had years ago. And he basically said, leave the students walking out thinking, wow, so what? This is different.
Exactly.
Like,
Go. Yes. The biggest lie, and we are going to end at some point because this can go on forever.
yeah,
And the biggest lie I've ever heard at a commencement event or a big, even conferences and so on and so forth is, you know, especially with young people, is, the future is yours. You go out there and things are going to be great and fantastic. No, they're not. It's going to be a bitch, man.
yeah,
And you ain't prepared for it because we've told you how great you are because you have all the A's on your damn report card. Guess what? Those A's are lies. Not because you're not smart, but because they didn't challenge you,
yeah,
right? And as soon as you walk out that door, cap and gown or otherwise, you are facing something totally different.
yeah,
And it isn't the security and safety of walking in to a classroom. That's easy, right?
yeah,
And it's a shocker. Like this young lady this morning, I mean, I said, she comes from Eritrea. She's got an accounting degree from Eritrea. She was actually a chief accountant at a very large company in Africa. And I looked at her, I said, it's not on your resume. You're an accountant. You know accounting. Oh, well, that's what I did in Eritrea. Uh, do you know accounting here in Canada is probably not that much,
that different. Yeah,
you know?
principles are probably the same.
Yeah. Holy, the things that young people feel are not relevant because they happen somewhere else
Yeah,
drives me crazy. I just look at them. And I've said this to new Canadians so many times. Said, how many languages do you speak, read, write? Oh, I do. On your resume, you have nothing about languages.
yeah,
Do you know that makes you different from everybody else looking for the same job?
yeah. And they don't understand what's valuable versus what's earned, right? I've
Exactly.
got a degree, but what's really valuable? I can teach a monkey to do business. I want the human.
Exactly.
The human. The human is
Hey,
a like in leadership in the army. I I could take an out of shape soldier any day over a brain dead one because one is trainable. One problem can be overcome,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like if I have a human who understands empathy and sympathy, and I have a human being who understands how to have difficult discussions in high stress environments, but doesn't know the theory, that I can teach a monkey the theory. That's easy to do, right? But they're getting out with all of these theoretical, I know all of
oh,
this stuff out of
oh
the
yeah, oh,
university, and then they
yeah,
walk into the working world, and you walk onto the floor of a stock exchange. Who
yeah.
cares about your masters in economics?
No,
You're about to get chewed alive.
you're in a war zone. Don't you realize what war is?
Right. And you can hold up your little safe space card all the time you want. And we're just going to drive over top of you.
Exactly.
It's like you're just joined a pack of lions and you
Yep.
want to take a break because you're stressed.
Yeah. No,
What?
don't work that way.
What? But again, people would be far more successful if we were truthful about what the real world. So we set people up for these idealistic environments that don't exist in
Yes.
the real world.
Yes.
And we turn our education system into these idealistic, everybody's safe, happy, wonderful, joyful, treated equally, blah, blah, blah. And then we toss them out into the world.
Well, even if we were to go, and we're going to end, I think, on this because I'm in command here.